Welcome viewer. Here I am going to explain the poem The Flea by John Donne line by line. Also, I am going to discuss the carpe diem theme, conceit and the religious imagery used in the poem. So without any delay, let's begin the first line. Mark but this flea and mark in this. The speaker begins by drawing his lover's attention to the flea. The repetition of mark emphasizes the importance of observing the flea and what it represents. The imperative tone commands the lover to notice something significant about the flea. How little that which thou deniest me is. The speaker points out how insignificant the thing his lover is denying him is, that is, their physical union, by comparing it to the flea. He implies that what he desires is as trivial and harmless as the flea itself. It sucked me first and now sucks thee. The flea has bitten both the speaker and his lover, drawing blood from each. This action of the flea becomes a physical link between them. The flea's bites are presented as a natural and inconsequential act. And in this flea, our two bloods mingled be. The mingling of their blood inside the flea symbolizes their union. The speaker uses this mingling to argue that their physical connection has already occurred in a way through the flea. This image serves to minimize the seriousness of their potential physical relationship. Thou knowest that this cannot be said. The speaker asserts that their mingling of blood in the flea cannot be considered a sin, shame, or loss of virginity. He appeals to the lover's reason, suggesting that the act is innocent, a sin, nor shame, nor loss of maidenhood. The speaker explicitly lists what their physical union is not. It is neither sinful, shameful, nor a loss of virginity. This line continues the argument that their union is harmless and without moral consequence. Yet this enjoys before it ooh, and pampered swells with one blood made of two. The flea has enjoyed the benefits of their blood mingling without any courtship or effort. This contrasts with the societal expectations of wooing and courtship before physical union, highlighting the simplicity and innocence of the act. The flea becomes engorged with their combined blood, thriving on their union. This swelling is a metaphor for the potential pleasure and fulfillment that their union could bring. And this, alas, is more than we would do. The speaker concludes the stanza with a note of irony and regret. He points out that the flea has achieved a union greater than what he and his lover have done or are allowed to do, subtly urging her to reconsider their relationship. Stanza 2. Oh, stay, three lives in one flea spare. The speaker pleads with his lover to refrain from killing the flea. He argues that the flea contains three lives, his, hers, and the flea's own life. This exaggerates the significance of the flea, making its death seem consequential, where we almost, nay, more than married are. The speaker claims that within the flea, they are not just close to being married, but are even more united than marriage would make them. This hyperbolic statement is meant to underscore the profound connection he perceives in their mingled blood. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. The flea is personified as a representation of both the speaker and his lover. It embodies their union, symbolizing their combined identities and connection. The speaker elevates the flea to a sacred status, calling it their marriage bed and marriage temple. This religious imagery implies that their union within the flea is sanctified and holy just as marriage would be. Though parents grudge and you were met. Despite any objections from their parents or even her own reluctance, the speaker points out that they are united within the flea. The flea defies societal and familial constraints, symbolizing a space where their union is unchallenged and cloistered in this living wall subject. The flea's dark body is described as living wall subject which cloister or enclose them. This image likens the flea to a private, sacred space akin to a monastery where their union is protected and isolated from the outside world. Though yous make you act to kill me. The speaker acknowledges that societal norms and her upbringing may make her inclined to reject him and metaphorically kill their union. He recognizes her potential desire to conform to societal expectations. Let not to that self murder added be, and sacrilege three sins in killing thee. He warns her that killing the flea would be tantamount to self murder because the flea contains parts of both of them. This hyperbolic plea is meant to make her feel responsible for ending their union if she kills the flea and sacrilege three sins in killing three. The speaker further intensifies his argument by calling the act of killing the flea sacrilege. He claims it would be committing three sins by killing the three lives contained within the flea his, hers, and the flea's. This religious reference is designed to make her hesitate by suggesting that such an act would be a grave moral transgression. Cruel and sudden hast thou sins, purple thy nail in blood of innocence. The speaker addresses his lover, accusing her of being cruel and impulsive for killing the flea. The abrupt action contrasts with his prolonged argument, emphasizing her disregard for his plea. He describes her nail as purpled with the flea's blood, which he calls blood of innocence. This phrase highlights the innocence of the flea and, by extension, the innocence of their mingled blood. The blood on her nail is a visual reminder of the flea's death and the destruction of their symbolic union. Wherein could this flea guilt be, except in that drop which it sucked from thee? The speaker questions how the flea could be guilty of any wrongdoings. By emphasizing the flea's innocence, he reinforces the idea that their mingled blood and potential union were harmless. Except in the drop which it sucked from the only crime the flea committed was sucking a drop of her blood. This underscores the triviality of the flea's action and, by analogy, the insignificance of their physical union. Yet thou trumpest and says that thou. The speaker notes that she triumphantly claims victory after killing the flea. This statement captures her sense of relief or empowerment after rejecting his arguments. Finds not thyself nor me the weaker now. After killing the flea, she observes that neither she nor the speaker has been weakened by its death. This line acknowledges that their fears were unfounded and that the act of killing the flea had no significant consequences. It is true, then learn how false fears be. The speaker concedes that she is right about not being weakened by the flea's death. He uses this realization to argue that their fears about physical union are similarly baseless. He suggests that just as the flea's death caused no harm, their union would cause no loss of honor or virtue. Just so much honor when thou yieldest to me. He argues that yielding to him would result in as little loss of honor as the flea's death did. This line equates the triviality of the flea's death and this line equates the triviality of the flea's death with the supposed loss of her honor, minimizing the significance of their physical union. Will waste as this flea's death took life from thee. The speaker concludes by asserting that the amount of honor she would lose by yielding to him is as negligible as the life lost by killing the flea. He reinforces the idea that her fears of losing honor are unfounded and that their union would be harmless and inconsequential. So, in the final stanza, the speaker responds to the lover's act of killing the flea. He acknowledges her triumphant reaction and the fact that neither of them has been harmed by the flea's death. He uses this to argue that their fears about physical union are similarly unfounded and that surrendering to him would not diminish her honor. The stanza employs logical reasoning, rhetorical questions, and vivid imagery to reinforce the speaker's argument and persuade his lover to reconsider her stance. Now let us discuss shortly the themes and techniques used in the poem. Number 1. Carpe diem theme. The theme of carpe diem is evident as the speaker tries to convince his lover to embrace their physical relationship without delay. The speaker uses the flea to downplay the significance of their union, suggesting that if their mingled blood within the flea is harmless, then their physical union would be similarly inconsequential. By minimizing the perceived consequences, he encourages his lover to seize the moment and act on their desires. Number 2, conceit. A conceit is an extended metaphor with a complex logic that governs a poetic passage or entire poem. We know that. So, in the plea, the conceit is the comparison of the flea to the lover's relationship. The flea becomes a symbol of their union, as it has bitten both the speaker and his beloved, mingling their blood. The speaker uses this to argue that their physical union is just as natural and harmless as the flea's bite. The conceit is extended as the flea becomes a marriage bed and marriage temple, signifying a sacred space where their union is sanctified. Even after the flea is killed, the speaker continues to use the conceit to show that the death of the flea is inconsequential, thereby suggesting that their physical union would similarly cause no harm. And finally, religious imagery. The flea is described as a marriage bed and marriage temple, which sanctifies their physical union within the flea. By doing so, the speaker conflates the sacred marriage and temple with the profane, the act of physical union, suggesting that their union is divinely ordained and morally acceptable. The speaker warns that killing the flea would be sacrilegious because it contains their combined essences. This religious allusion is intended to make the act of killing the flea and by extension rejecting their union seem like a grave sin. I hope the meaning of the poem is clear to you now. Hit the like button please and subscribe the channel for more. Thank you.